Welcome to the Financial Independence Workshop, the first in a series of personal financial education workshops that will help you become financially independent. Who is Michael Evans and why should you listen to him? Well, I graduated from Loyola Marymount University in 1995 with a Bachelor's of Arts degree in economics, focused on econometrics. I have 15 years of government management experience with a total of 25 years in operations and financial management experience. My last government job, I was the Chief Financial Officer for Santa Barbara County's Mental Health Department, where I managed a $100 million budget. I was an active real estate investor from 1997 to 2005. I was actually paid $15,000 to buy my first house. I've owned 3 houses with a combined equity of more than $350,000, and I've never used a penny of my own money. So what is financial independence? Let me give you my definition. It's having enough monthly cash flow to afford to live the way you want without having to work. Now, there's some keywords that I've highlighted. Monthly cash flow, afford, want, and work. So let's go through each of these keywords. So the first keyword is monthly cash flow. Basically, it's cash coming in minus cash going out. Now, you calculate cash flow over a specific time frame. It could be weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly, or even annually. And each of us has a personal cash flow statement. The second keyword is afford. And I define afford as being able to buy something and being able to meet that cost of something without unacceptable difficulty. Key phrase, unacceptable difficulty. Next is want, which is your desires beyond your needs, because every human being has a set of basic needs that need to be met in order to survive. But you have to be careful because you have to ask yourself, when do your wants become excessive and turn into greed? And the last keyword is work. Work is simply time and energy expended in order to receive a reward. Now, most of us work 40 hours or more per week, which is time and energy, in order to get a paycheck, which is our reward. But there's other types of work, such as when an athlete trains, expends time and energy in order to win at whatever they're competing, their reward. So let's talk about how you use the financial independence equation in order to calculate your financial independence number. And there's 3 parts of the equation. The first is the expense budget, which is based on your wants. Next is the cash flow return on investment, which is in line with your risk tolerance. And the last is income producing assets. And we'll go over each one of these parts. So here's the equation. Take your income producing assets multiplied by your cash flow return on investment equals your annual cash flow. Now, your annual cash flow has to be greater than your annual expense budget. Here's an example. If your income producing assets equal $1 million and your cash flow return on investment is 10%, $1 million times 10% equals $100,000 in cash flow per year. And if your annual expense budget is $75,000, then you generate enough cash flow to cover your expense budget. Now let's go into detail on each part of the financial independence equation. We'll start with the expense budget. It's the most important part of the equation because we control 100% of our expenses. We control how we spend money. Your income is not guaranteed. You can work for somebody else and they can lay you off, reduce your hours, or reduce your wage. And if you work for yourself, your sales may not come in at the volume that you expected them to. We always have the ability to decide how we spend money. And for this equation, your expense budget should be based on how you want to live, and it should be an annual amount. Next is your cash flow return on investment, what I call CROI. It's based on your risk tolerance. Your risk tolerance is how willing are you to risk losing all of your income producing assets that you've accumulated. I want you to rate that risk tolerance on a scale of 1 to 100, 1 being that you have 0 tolerance to lose any of your income producing assets, to where 100 is that you're willing to risk all of your income producing assets in order to make more money. Next, I want you to take that number and divide it by 5. So for example, if your risk tolerance is 50, where you're right in the middle, you take 50 divided by 5, and now your CROI, your cash flow return on investment, is 10%. The last thing is to calculate your income producing assets. And it's basically your expense budget divided by your CROI. So in this example, where we said our expense budget was $75,000 and we said that our CROI was 10%, we take 75,000 divided by 10% equals $750,000. That is your financial independence number. So now that you know what your destination is, the question is, how are you going to get there? You achieve your financial independence number by developing an asset accumulation plan, or an AAP. Now, there are three parts of the asset accumulation plan. The first is investment. It's the annual amount that you consistently put toward this goal. The second is time, which is the number of years that you consistently put money towards this goal. And the third is your AROI, or your annual return on investment, which is how much you receive over the years on the money that you consistently put towards this goal. See a theme in the word consistently? Now let's go into more detail on each of these parts. So let's start with investment. We assume that you invest the same amount at the beginning of each year. Technically, you don't have to do it at the beginning of each year. All you have to do is be consistent and invest at least the same amount each year. Next is time. And as human beings, it's the most valuable resource that we have. You can't get it back, you can't make more of it, and you don't know when it's going to expire. It's also the standard by which money is valued. I can also guarantee you this. Once you become financially independent, you will extend your life. You will have more time with less stress in order to do the things that we were put here on earth to do, which is to have experiences. So let's talk about asset return on investment, AROI. It's different than cash flow ROI, which is CROI. AROI is applied to the annual investments in order to grow them into income-producing assets. AROI is applied to your annual investments while you're working, so your risk tolerance should be higher while you're working compared to when you're not working and you're relying upon your income-producing assets to generate cash flow. Therefore, your CROI should be more conservative than your AROI and should be lower than your AROI, right? Because protecting your cash flow from your income producing assets is way more important than creating assets while you're working. So this is your asset accumulation plan equation worksheet. It's an Excel file. You see that it has 3 columns, investment, time, ROI, and 5 rows, current investment balance, annual investment, number of years remaining, asset ROI, and income producing assets goal. The row at the bottom equals your financial independence number. As you can see from our example, it's set at $750,000. The top row is your current investment balance. So if you already have money saved, you would enter that information into the top row. If you don't, just leave it blank. The next 3 rows represent the 3 variables in the equation. As you change 2 of the variables, the third variable in green will automatically change. So in the investment column, you can change the number of years remaining in the asset ROI and it will calculate the annual investment. In the time column, change the annual investment in the asset ROI and it will automatically calculate the number of years remaining. And in the ROI column, change the annual investment and number of years remaining and it will automatically calculate the asset ROI. So now let's take a look at what happens as we change different variables. So in this first example, the investment column is our starting point. We invest $6,366 per year for 20 years at an asset ROI of 15% in order to accumulate $750,000 in income producing assets. We see in the time column that when we double our annual investment and we keep the asset ROI the same, the number of years remaining goes from 20 to 15.46. We also see in the ROI column, when we double our annual investment and we keep the number of years the same, our asset ROI goes down from 15% to 9.45% in order to produce the same $750,000 goal. So what this shows is that when we double the annual investment amount, time is reduced by 23% and the ROI is reduced by 37% in order to achieve the same financial goal. Now in this example, the time column is our starting. You see that we started with $6,366 per year, 20 years, 15% in order to produce $750,000. In the investment column, when we cut the number of years in half from 20 to 10, keep the asset ROI the same at 15%, the annual investment jumps up to $32,120. And in the last ROI column, when we cut the years to 10, keep the annual investment the same, our asset ROI jumps up to 43.34%. This shows that when you cut the number of years you're investing in half, the amount that you have to invest each year increases by 400%, or your asset ROI increases by almost 200%. This shows that time is truly on your side, and the more time you have to invest, the easier it is to become financially independent. Now in this last scenario, we keep the ROI column the same. And what we do is we double the asset ROI. So in the investment column, we double the asset ROI from 15% to 20%, leave the number of years at 20, and you'll see that our annual investment decreases to only $915. In the next time column, when we double the asset ROI and we leave the annual investment at $6,366, the number of years decreases from 20 to 12.73. So what's the conclusion from this slide? When you double the asset ROI, you reduce the amount that you have to invest each year by 86%, and you can reduce the time by 36%. Now you might be saying, that's great, Mike, but how am I going to get a 15% annual ROI, let alone a 30% ROI? This is where I give you the tools to make these extreme double-digit annual returns using leverage, but that's for another workshop. So now, let me summarize. So financial independence is having enough monthly cash flow to afford to live the way you want without having to work. There are 4 key words from this definition that you need to know. The first is monthly cash flow, cash coming in minus cash going out. The second is afford, being able to meet the cost of something without unacceptable difficulty. The third is want, your desires beyond your needs but not to the extent of being greedy. And the fourth is work, the time and energy you expend in order to receive a reward. You have the financial independence number equation, which gives you your FIN. It's your income producing assets times your cash flow return on investment equals your annual cash flow, and that has to be greater than your expense budget. Now remember, your expense budget is based on how you want to live. In our example, our expense budget was $75,000. Your cash flow return on investment, or your CROI, is based on your risk tolerance of losing all of your income producing assets. It's based on a scale of 1 to 10. Take that number and divide it by 5, and that gives you your CROI. In our example, the risk tolerance was 50, therefore 50 divided by 5 equaled a CROI of 10%. And the final part of the equation is calculating the income producing assets, which is simply the expense budget divided by CROI. So in our example, income producing assets equals $75,000 divided by 10%, which equals $750,000, and that's the FIN number in our example. Once you have your financial independence number and you know your destination, now you have to develop a plan to get there. And that's the asset accumulation plan, or the AAP. It has 3 parts. The first part is the investment. It's the annual amount that you consistently put towards this goal. Second is time. It's the number of years that you consistently put money towards the goal. And the last is your asset ROI, or your AROI. It's the annual return on investment that you receive over the years that you put money towards the goal. Now, we have a template that calculates and compares the effects of changing the 3 variables in order to reach your asset accumulation plan, which is your FIN number, your financial independence number. Just remember, there are an infinite number of paths in order to reach your financial independence number, and the journey is just as important as the destination. So here are the next steps. Open a Power 10 savings card account at www.potscard.com. With as little as $10 to open up the account, you're immediately going to start earning 10% interest per year credited to your account daily, and you're going to earn 10% back on everything that you do with the card. After that, feel free to schedule a free, no obligation financial condition assessment where I will personally produce your 3 financial statements that every individual has: your cash flow statement, your balance sheet, and your income statement. This will then be the starting point for you to develop a plan in order to reach your financial independence number. Now, this ends the first part of the Financial Independence Workshop. You may want to take a 5 or 10-minute break before we jump into the second part, developing self-discipline. Because I can help you develop the best plan in the world, but if you don't have the self-discipline to stick to it, you've wasted your time and energy. Now on to the next part of the workshop, developing self-discipline. So let's start with, what is self-discipline? I define self-discipline as training and control of oneself and one's conduct, usually for personal improvement. So let's start with talking about the keys to developing self-discipline. I've identified 4 of them. 1, develop your goals. Then identify your daily habits. Have a good support system, and turn your habits into rituals. What are your goals, and how do you turn your goals into objectives? You can have different types of goals, such as financial goals, health and fitness goals, or personal goals. Goals are lofty and tend to be non-specific, whereas objectives are measurable and have a deadline. What I recommend is that you set annual goals with monthly or quarterly objectives. Once you have your objectives, then you need to create daily habits. You have to ask yourself, what habits are you going to practice daily in order to meet your goals and objectives? So, if you have a financial goal, you'll have a financial objective and financial habits. Same go with health or with personal. So, how do you practice good daily habits? It starts with having a good support system. Now, what's a support system? It's people and activities in an environment that help you with your daily habits. It starts with choosing the right crowd. Now, do you hang out at the bar if you want to stop drinking? No. You surround yourself with people who practice the same type of habits. So if your habit is to exercise, you may hang out with people who exercise or go to the gym. Now, when it comes to a good support system, I can't emphasize how important it is to be around the right people. The right people supporting each other in the right environment will change lives. And the people around you are your biggest influence. They influence what you think, what you believe, what you do, even what you say. Hang around with positive people, and you tend to be positive. Hang around with negative people, and you tend to be negative. Once you establish your habits, you want to turn them into rituals. Like the saying goes, practice makes perfect. You want to practice your habits in order for them to become second nature. Now, this doesn't happen overnight, and no one's saying that it's going to be easy. I recommend that you develop a daily schedule and you join a support group. You want to schedule time each day to perform your new habit, and you want to schedule to meet regularly with your support group. I recommend that you add structure to your daily routine. Now, this doesn't mean being perfect, and it doesn't mean not having any variation or creativity, because creativity actually gives birth to your daily routines and to your habits. What it actually means is being committed, consistent, and accountable. So, I've developed 4 steps to self-discipline that have worked for me. So let's go through each one of them. The first one is to have faith in God and in yourself. God's unconditional love gives you spiritual authority, and I define spiritual authority as the mind's ability to control energy. Number 2 is believe it. Now, you activate your spiritual authority through your thoughts and through your behavior, and then you exercise your spiritual authority through your actions and your words. The third is to declare it. Your words have power. Say out loud what you believe and what you perform in your habit. This conditions your subconscious mind, which simply does what it is repeatedly told. Also, declare it out loud with your support group. Number 4 is do it. Don't make excuses. Don't put it off. There's nothing that can stop you but yourself. So, let's quickly summarize. What is self-discipline? It's training and control of oneself and one's conduct, usually for personal improvement. What are the keys to self-discipline? There's 4 of them. Develop your goals, identify your daily habits, get a good support system, and then turn your habits into rituals. Then you develop goals, which tend to be non-specific. then objectives, which are measurable and have a deadline. And then you create habits, and you practice those habits daily in order to achieve your goals and objectives. So we talked about getting a good support system. And what's a support system? Consists of people and activities in an environment that helps you with your daily habits. We talked about the importance of choosing the right crowd. Surround yourself with people who practice the same type of habits because the people around you are your biggest influence. I talked about how practice makes perfect and you need to add structure to your daily routine. Right? We talked about not being perfect, but being committed, consistent, and accountable. Developing a daily schedule and joining a good support group. Schedule each time to perform your new habit and schedule to meet regularly with your support group. I then finished off with the 4 steps to self-discipline. 1. Have faith in God and yourself. 2. Believe it. 3. Declare it. 4. Do it. So, wrapping it up, take life one day at a time. Remember, every day is a present, so be mindful of it. Make sure that you perform your new habits every day, and every day won't be perfect, and you may stumble along the way, but it's okay, because God's unconditional love never changes. The only thing that changes is the choices that we make. So, you can choose to be close to God's unconditional love, or you can choose to pull away from God's unconditional love. But remember, no matter what choice you make, God's unconditional love never changes, and God's love is always there for you.